Howdy ho, friends and foes, and welcome to Dad's on Life, your weekly episodic show about parenting from a male perspective. I'm your host, Jay Miles, and with me, as always, are my co hosts, Keith Bogan, Chad
Hello,
Allen,
sir.
Oh,
and Doug Hammondike.
good afternoon.
Today, we're going to be talking about letting go. In certain activities and certain times in their life, when it is a good time and at what age to let your children go out on their own. So, who'd like to start us off? Keith, I mean, this was your idea. So,
And it's partly the idea of when to let them go out on their own, but I think it's also when to let them do things in general. Interestingly enough, the very first snippet that came to mind for me was one of the many disagreements I had with my now ex-wife. What a shock. That I remember when Justin was, I forget if he was just shy of his second birthday or he had to be. He was like a year and a half old, maybe shy of his second birthday. And she still had him in the crib. And I kept saying, we've got his real bedroom set up. He's got this really cool race car bed ready to go. And when are we putting him into it? Oh, no, he's not ready for that yet. He'll fall out of it. Now, mind you, the race car bed was about this high off the ground. So the mattress was, if he rolled out of the bed, he wouldn't go anywhere because he'd fall about 6 inches on the carpet. And we kept going back and forth, but I kept going, that's what parenting is all about. You challenge your kid. And one day she went out to one of her sales meetings that she was doing back then and came home really late. And when she came home, Justin was sound asleep in the race car bed because I had decided it was time. Now, it wasn't a mutual decision. It probably wasn't the best husbandly thing to do. I certainly made my share of mistakes in that area, but Justin had no trouble at all falling asleep. And in fact, he was thrilled. He was excited as hell to do something that he looked at as being more grown up than being in a crib. I remember walking down the street in Princeton, one of my worst memories, and Justin's probably about 4, maybe 4.5, something like that. And I'm holding his hand, and it's a pretty busy street. And I'm like, we've got to teach him how to walk without holding his hand. So without, again, consulting my wife at the time, I kind of just let his hand go and see if he would continue walking with me. And in a flash, he wasn't next to me, and I didn't know where he was. And it took us 30 seconds to find him in the crowd. So my bad. I should have been like staring at him when I did it, but I didn't. And scariest time of my life, I will tell you. Terrifying. That 30 seconds felt like 6 years trying to find him in that crowd. But there's all sorts of viewpoints on when you let go. When do you let them date for the first time? When do you let them be alone in the house with a member of another gender for the first time? When do you want to send them off to camp for the first time? Whatever that sort of thing is. Would love to hear some of your stories on that too, because boy, I'm sure it's different for all of us. And again, is it different for the guy who has girls instead of boys?
Well, I guess one of my stories is kind of related to what you're talking about with kind of the sleeping alone. And, very early on, I'm not exactly sure how old Frankie even was, but I'm guessing probably a year, maybe. But we were trying to move him into his own room, and his mother and I were both in agreement, but he would just go in the room, and I'm a big believer in operant conditioning, right? So I kind of get that. Everybody responds to positive and negative reinforcement. And so that's kind of what we tried to do. We didn't want to give him the wrong signals, if you will. But I remember we put him in his crib, and he's just standing there bawling, and we closed his door, and we're just like both standing outside. He kind of acted like we left, right? But we're both standing there and it was so hard just listening to that little kid, my son, crying his eyeballs out and wanting to go in there and just making it better, right?
Mm-hmm.
But within 10 minutes, He's asleep. He's okay. No problems at all after that. I mean, that was just kind of the first of several, kind of different advancements, I guess, in him uh, being alone and kind of becoming more independent. But I think for the parents, for us, it was important that he got to his own room as well. But we kind of go from that to uh, going to school and like worrying about him at school, and is he being picked on? Are people, is somebody doing something to him? And just because when he's out of your sight, like I think the next part was probably going to nursery school. And he had a great nursery school teacher, a couple of great nursery school teachers at a great school. No worries really, but of course, as a parent, you're worried. But it's that in becoming more and more independent, kind of just difficult to let go, I think, at times. But you gotta do it. We all have to do it, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was just thinking about, how maybe in like a couple, well, at least a couple years, well, for people maybe a couple, I don't know, 10 or so years younger than us or our age, our parents, it was like kind of like, you grew up and you grew to an age of like 18 and your parents wanted you out. You had a job or you were going to college or something like that. And that's what you thought of letting go, is like when your parents decided you got to get out, and that's happened a couple times in my life where it was like, I got to an age, and the joke in our house was 18 and out, you got that age and you were out, and you move close to your job or whatever. But also, I think letting go is also like one of those things where if you don't let go, you wind up with teens rebelling. And I don't know how you'd put it in your own language, but for us, it would be rebelling. And, just at the point where you're like, I can't do this anymore, and I'm going to do my own thing and think my own way, And, but I think also some of it too is also great that, if you have a close family and you're always together, that's a good thing and it's important. And nowadays, I think sometimes we let our kids off alone and say, we're kind of letting go and not thinking of the idea that family is important as well, that, just keeping a close family versus just leveraging it with, letting go is like important thing. But for us, I did mention a couple weeks ago, having Brendan home alone with, and having a neighbor come, and the joke was, was it a female that came into the house? And I said, oh no, it's just our neighbor's kid. And Chad brought up this as well as I think just mentioned it about having like, or maybe Keith did, about having like our kids with people of the opposite sex alone. Yeah, I could see that coming, and I could see that's going to be a definitely interesting topic to discuss, and when it's appropriate and not appropriate for this household. So I think that's going to probably be the next upcoming hurdle with letting go.
You're right at that age point where your kids are just, starting to talk about that subject. Chad and myself, our kids are a little bit older. So we sort of moved past that. And I mean, just yesterday I was out all day and Jeremy was home with his girlfriend watching TV. Or at least that's what they told me.
Netflix and chill, is that what they said?
Yes, yeah. Funny, the sheets were changed. No, never mind. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, but even when you get to the ages that Frankie or Justin and Jeremy are, there's still a whole lot of holding on and not letting go. I mean, my ex and I talk about Jeremy's meal plan. He's 18 years old. He registered himself for college. He chose his own dorm and all that stuff. But here, she in particular is really looking closely. Did he choose the right meal plan? Is he eating the proper food and all that sort of thing? And she really wants to get information from him on that so she can weigh in on it. And I'm sort of like, he's not going to starve. He's going to figure it out. And I'm trying to take a hands-off thing because I know he'll just eat a lot of chicken nuggets and be done with it. You know, that's what he does. And she's definitely a lot more hands-on, and it's always been that way. I've been more pushing him to go do stuff, and she's always been more holding on, if you will. But it doesn't change. She and I are still kind of watching Justin's grades, and Justin's 21. He's completely independent, and I probably shouldn't be worried about it. But I think I want to know his grades, not so much for his grades, but to know if he's happy with what's happening around him. I know if he didn't get good grades, he'd be really upset. So that's sort of what I'm keeping an eye on as a dad.
And I think too, Keith, to your point, once you're a parent, it doesn't end. You're a parent until you die, right? I mean, I'll be watching what's going on with my son and with my kids as long as I'm alive and trying to help. I mean, because even, I've got a sister and she's had some problems. So I think my mom spent most of her time being concerned with what's going on with my sister. But still, even in my life, as I got older, she could see things happening, whether it's in my marriage or with jobs or whatever, and was always concerned. And I think that's the way that, I'll be as well as Frankie ages. And, I've been recently more like you have been, being much more hands off as well. Like I used to call him probably 2 or 3 times a week, and then he stopped answering the phone. So now I figure if I talk to him about once a week, once every 10 days, that's pretty good, because I thought back to how often I talked to my mom, although we didn't have cell phones back then, so it wasn't as convenient. Talked a lot less. And even now with my mom, I probably talk to her once a week, and sometimes it probably goes, but whenever I call my mom, she's always happy. But I think she realizes I've got my own life, I've got things going on, and that's where I've got to get with Frankie as well. He's got his own life. He's got a social life as well as an academic life out of college, and he's doing his own thing. And I need to back off a little bit, because this is where he becomes independent. Not that I will not check on him, if you will, or keep an eye on him, but because we're always looking for any indications of a problem. So,
Well, like you, we with Delana, both of them actually slept in our bed for a little while because they didn't like their cribs and they couldn't sleep in them very well. We transferred them into the toddler beds, I guess they are, or whatever they are, within a couple of weeks. No, Delana, we transferred it in the toddler bed and she was fine. Sadie, we transferred it in the toddler bed and she hated it. So we got her a big girl bed, and then she got out of her bed and got in her own. And there's been that was probably by 2, maybe 3, the latest with both of them. I think Sadie was 3 really when she got her big girl bed, her real bed, her twin bed. But no, it. And as for you mentioned having a boy over, well, for Delana, she's had a boy who's been in her life forever, since they were probably 6 weeks old, and so it's been now 9 years. The kid's been in her life. So, and she's been over there a few times. But alone, 12, something like that, 13. An actual date, 13, 12, 13, something like that. I was pretty sure 11. So to me, it might be a little bit later, but not too much at all. 12, something like that. And it just would pretty much be, just situational of drop off and things like that. But actually alone with, maybe 13, alone, where you can be kind of alone in a room together at 13, 14, around there. And at first, so Sadie doesn't have any really that many friends. She has a few, but and there's no boys. There hasn't been many boys at all. So, but it's going to be a similar handling with Sadie as it would be with Elena. They're both going to be handled the same way, but in some of those aspects. As for one thing of like going to, taking your bike and going to your friend's house alone or something like that. It's a different time than it was when we were kids, but does that really, I don't know if it exactly changes anything in that aspect.
Wait, the first time they do it alone, they don't do it alone.
No.
I think they do.
Yeah. No. I mean, Delana has a friend that really, the one friend that's close enough that I would say no problem for sure is maybe 3-4 minutes away, something like that. So, and I mean, obviously, you just would get in contact with Elise and I would get in contact with her mother and, figure it out, take her that way and figure it out similarly on her own, how long it would take. And then obviously if it takes double that, you text or whatever. I mean, especially with Delana having Messenger, actually both of them having Messenger on their tablets. Maybe obviously she doesn't take the tablet, but there's a way to make it work out. I wouldn't say she has to pick up the phone and call, but you just exchange text messages or Facebook messages with the mother or father. That would be, that's probably, I mean, honestly, with Delana, I could probably see that maybe next year, that being a possibility of doing something. But if it was a friend, like her friend Peyton, no, that's a ways off, because that's by bike. For me, that's probably about 8 minutes, but it's crossing a pretty major road too. So that's not going to happen for a while.
No.
That's crossing Englishtown Road. No, I know somebody who was probably, I think he was 10 maybe, and he was killed crossing Englishtown Road. So
isn't that quite a distance from your house anyway?
What, Englishtown Road?
Yeah.
Not really. It's not really that much of a distance.
I come in from that distance all the time when I visit you, and that's pretty far.
From Englishtown Road? No.
Yeah.
From here to Englishtown Road? No. If you go Mimi, it's not. It's maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes.
Okay, I'm way more protective of your kids, I think, than you are.
So basically, going to Englishtown Road and going to the girls' house that's around the corner, it's probably the same distance. Maybe 3, 4. It can't be that long. Doesn't seem like it's that long to me. And I'm not saying riding that top speed either, but go ahead.
I was just thinking that I don't know. I was going to say that, like, when Chad was talking, I was thinking that, like, also when us as parents, I think, and letting go, it's also a measure for us to, when we do let go, to see what kind of decisions our kids are going to make, and are they going to make the right ones or the wrong ones, and trying to stay away to, like, let them make their own decisions, but at the same time being aware of what they are doing. And also that there's a difference between what the rules are and then breaking the rules versus us letting go, because you know, even as adults, I remember that just before we got married, I went back home because I had, you know, apartment leases were up and stuff, and my wife had moved into our new apartment, and neither of our parents were going to allow us to live together before being married. So I went back home to save a couple of bucks, you know, for a couple of months, and still we weren't allowed to be left alone as adults. You know, my parents had that rule that, you know, man, opposite sexes aren't to be left alone, you know, in the privacy moments. And we were engaged, ready to be married, like within a couple of months. And I just remember that that was like one of those things. And that's what I mean about rules and letting go, and the difference between them, you know.
Yeah, no, that's not being almost engaged and not being in the same room. How old were you, Doug?
Well, it's just, what should I call it? Like in my late 20s.
Okay, that's what I thought. That's where I thought you were going with that. Okay. No, I mean by wow.
Well, Jason, I'm not sure about you, but I'm not letting your girls out of the house before they're 40 anyway, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, you're probably right. I talk a good game, but I don't know. No, I don't know. There's got to come a point where you kind of go, to me, where you got to go, yeah, they're gonna do it. So, I mean,
I go visit Jason and he's sharpening machetes on the front porch. I mean, I don't know what that means, but you know.
It's funny. But I think one of the things that goes along with letting go for us too is like preparing them to be an independent. I guess independent is probably the wrong word, but more independent, right? So we teach them how to do the things that they're going to go and do. You know, so we go out, we cross the street with them. To your point, Keith, we cross the street. How are they going to cross the street? Are they going to do a good job? And then, you know, maybe the first time we teach them, then on the way back, we see how do they do? Are they looking? Or are they just kind of following you? Do we have the confidence in their decision making after we've had that chance to kind of show them the way? And then, you know, to Doug's point, and then looking over their shoulders to see what kind of decisions they're making as they're doing this stuff kind of on their own. You know, I think it's really a process, you know, when we think about it, like making sure that they have both kind of the tactical know-how as well as kind of training within the home, the process or the kind of values that they need, whether it's on the street or alone with a boy or those kinds. So there's all kinds of factors I think that play into it that even occur before we get to the point where we go, okay, now we're ready to let them go. Now we're ready to let them ride their bikes to wherever they want to go. You know what I mean? It's like we have to teach them, we have to observe them, then we have to fight ourselves to let them go.
I wish I could remember back to when my parents let me go. It's way too many decades now. I have no memories of what I was entrusted to do and when.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like when I grew up, I remember being 6 years old. My mom be like, "Run up to the milk store. I need," you know, and I was like 5 years old, and like it wasn't like a really busy street, but they were busy streets, and I would either ride my bike or walk up there, and you know, I was a little kid, and to tell you the truth, at my age then, and again, this is some of this is generational. I didn't worry about somebody swinging by and pulling me in their van, right, or any of that stuff. With my son, yeah, you know, it's 20 some years later or whatever, however many years later, and I worried much more about that stuff, about an abduction or somebody trying to do something wrong.
I know that when I was 10, 11, 12 years old, I was periodically left home alone. And there's no way I'd probably get arrested for leaving my kid home alone if they were 10 years old now.
Yep. Well, and that's why I think I left Frankie home when he was probably 8 or 9. But I mean, it was, again, I think I told you guys, it's for very short amounts of time, and grocery store for a half hour. He's good, and he has his phone. Call me, but it's for extended times, didn't happen.
Right.
But he did stay in my house his senior year alone. And, when I would have a business trip or a recreational trip, let's call it, and I'd be gone for a week or so, he'd always have to go over and take care of the dog. But I have a feeling there was more than just taking care of the dog going on too.
Empty house, let's party.
Which was okay. But I had certain rules, and again, it's, I'm a pretty liberal parent, I think, but, I'm very honest with him about everything, sometimes probably too honest, but just said, you can't do this. I don't want the police in my house. I don't want anybody getting hurt, etc. You got to follow these rules. But that's part of it too. And I mean, one of my big fears when I went to school, when I went to college, I remember how the freshman class coming in, everybody was always so drunk in the first weekend, right? With all the parties. And all these girls, everybody was like, oh, fresh meat. It's like people coming in, I'm like, man, that is just a bad situation, because these people are coming in and a lot of them have never been exposed to this kind of stuff. I was always like, hey, let's you want to drink at home? You can drink at home. I want you to understand the effects of alcohol and different types of alcohol. You can't go out in public and do this stuff, but if you want to sit here and do it with me, we can do it, because I teach you everything else in your life. Why wouldn't I teach you this? Why would I? You're on your own with this, on something that could be so dangerous, right?
Yeah.
So, so I don't know if that always helps, because I think we all have not we all, but some of us have the propensity to go out and to over drink it, over serve at times, right? And even though
I have no idea what you're talking about. I just no idea.
No.
And even though we know it, we still do it at times. I get together with some of my buddies and I'm like, why do we drink so much? It's just because you get together and you're having a good time and stuff, right? But that's one thing. It's kind of, again, it's that teaching. I teach you everything else. Why would I just say, don't do this? And then all of a sudden you have this knowledge when you're 21 about drinking? No.
Yeah.
All right, you got to shoot that bell there, the ring bell thing you got.
I'm trying to figure out how to turn it off.
You're failing. It's terrible.
With everything that we were just talking about, is, I guess part of the letting go is what our parents don't know when they have let go, and what's gone on behind the scenes. And we were saying about parties and stuff with our parents being out. And I remember my brother, my parents being away for a couple of days and coming home and finding, an outrageous party, and me and my wife now like throwing people out of the house, like, what do you think you're doing? Like, and they're like, well, this guy. And I'm like, I own this house, which I did. It's my parents' house. But it's like these things that your parents have let go, and they think that you can handle these responsibilities, but the stories that they don't hear. And I know that this is going to be one of those things where us too, like my kids will be telling, stories, in 20 years, well, I remember this time that, and all the mishaps and stuff, and how we survived, and how things have changed nowadays, where, because we're so inundated with technology and stuff, that it's so easy to like keep better tabs on our kids. Whether we do or not, it's a different question. But I think there's less likelihood, maybe. But like we all know how to get around and these things, and do what we want to do when we are alone. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah. I remember my stepdad used to, whenever they would leave, he would count the number of beers he had in the refrigerator, right? Because to make sure that right. So, and they left for a weekend one time. So I had a party, and my buddy had some beer, and he just like put it in the fridge. So my stepdad gets back, and he's like, he goes, I could swear I had 8 beers in there. He goes, now I have 12. I'm like, oh, I think one of my buddies left some for you.
That works. That works.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, just trying to keep tabs. But I think it's things that we all do, and I look too at some of the experiences that I've had versus kind of what other people have had as well, and the letting go part. Like, if our kids go out and they get into trouble, well, we know. And like I'd say from my perspective, very seldom did my parents know, because if I got myself into trouble, I got myself out, right?
Right.
And it might be like trying to get that ticket or whatever out of the mailbox before they get it, or whatever it is, or trying to call somebody else's parents before my parents, for the party or something like that. But I always tempered it, and for the most part, I think my parents thought I was a pretty good kid.
Yeah,
I was, for the most part. Not that I didn't have hiccups.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was for the most part too. I wasn't a bad kid at all. My issues have come over the last 10 years, I would say.
You're just making up for lost time, Jason. That's all you're doing.
Nate Bloomer, something like that.
Yeah, sort of. No, yeah, it's been over the last few years, like I said, that I've had some issues. But no, it's been the way the girls are now. I hope they continue on the path they're on, because they're pretty good, for the most part. Don't necessarily listen to everything, and it takes some coaxing to get them to do certain things. Usually it's essentially cleaning up their rooms, things like that. But for the most part, they're pretty good kids. So I mean, as they grow, and if they continue on that path, there's going to be a lot more freedoms, and the freedoms will be attained quicker with the staying on that path.
Good luck with that, Jason. How's the shotgun collection coming along?
Well, that's kind of how my stepdad would explain things to me, and how I explain things to Frankie too. Is I'm like, all the stuff that you can do, I'm like, you don't have a right to do any of that stuff. I go, those are all privileges, and you have
Right.
to earn privileges.
Right.
And you can set yourself back by doing the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, not that we've really had any problems with my approach to how I address some of the issues.
Yeah, I've done a few of the wrong things over time. Set me back a little bit. I figured it out.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah,
life.
I was just thinking. Yeah, because I was like thinking about letting go and the triumphs that we have when we see our kids made the right decision and all, but also for myself, my parents letting go, and then when I've done something that we were saying that you can't get yourself out of, and you have to call them up and say, hey, I need help, and I'm sorry that, well, you don't even say sorry, you just say, hey, I need help. But in your back of your mind, you're like, I had this responsibility and I really messed up here. I'm sure that this is going to come more into play, as my boys get older, and as they grow in responsibility, and they do things that are disappointing. And we question, hey, was that a right decision? And or are they able to handle these when we let go? I'm sure this is going to be more and more a thing for as well for me and Jason, I'm sure.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, like I said, my issues have come more recently than they were when I was younger. But I hope there's that the girls will be able to handle things better than I did. But I see, like I said, I mean, I've seen the way they're going, and I hope they continue the way they're going. That's really all I can hope for right now. Because there's running that risk of being too overbearing, and then you deal with other issues, which that's just not the way I am. So, keep trying to do things the way that I've been doing, and hopefully they'll, keep responding to positively.
Well, I think you hit a good point, hit on a good point there, Jason, with not being too overbearing, because I think really in this process, it's about where you need to be, because you can't be too overbearing, but also I think it's dangerous if you're too liberal, right? So it's kind of coming up with that happy medium, and I Keith and I are the guys who I think are a little further along in this process than you guys. And I know that for myself, I haven't done everything perfectly, but I haven't done too awful bad. I don't believe, but it's like hard to find that happy medium about what's enough, but not too much, but not too loose on the kind of on the oversight, because you want to offer that guidance without being authoritarian at a certain point. I mean, and some of it depends on at what age as well for them.
Right.
So.
And clearly what you did with Frankie, you may have released him to do certain things younger than I did with Justin and Jeremy because of just maturity in general.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going too far out on a limb to say that my boys were not overly mature in their high school years. So perhaps I released a little later than you might have with Frankie, if you will. But then that accelerated quite a bit in college. It's almost like, I threw them out the door and I just stopped doing anything when they went to college. But I was a little, I considered myself overly protective in their high school years. My ex, of course, thinks that I completely abandoned them and I didn't pay attention to them at all. But that's, different perspectives, if you will. They didn't get the reins on their lives until they went to college. That's for sure.
Yeah. But that's a lot of times that's really when we give it to them, right? I mean, before that, they're living in your house. They've got certain rules. And that's even here on break. It's kind of like my house, my rules. When you're here, when you go back to school, you can do whatever you want, or within limits, of course. But I'm not there to be there to judge. But I want peace in my house. And if you're okay with what you're doing in your place, that's good.
I think that some of it too is going to play into us being more conservative and very, very by the book religious. That might be harder for us to let go in certain extents, and the rules are maybe a little bit rougher. Already we see like some of the things like, my friends, and it's like, yeah, well, we're not like your friends or your friends' families. And in my house, it was funny because like it's one of those things. Well, if your friends jumped off a bridge with you, and Jason might know this, and it's like, yeah, because me and my brother have there in Lawrence Harbor to jump off that bridge because our friends have. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
This is very true. What's that?
Not a good example there, apparently.
No. No, not at all.
When my boys were growing up, one of the early ways we tried to let go, particularly me, but even my wife to an extent, was the no blood rule. Two boys, Doug knows this, I'm sure. If you have two boys, you know they will fight with each other frequently. It's simply human nature. And in fact, if they don't, there's something probably wrong. And if they started to wrestle, I would simply pick up my drink and my book or whatever I was doing, and I'd walk out of the room and I'd say, "Call me when you're done." But the
my
rule,
wife has already asked, "Is this normal?"
right? The rule was you couldn't draw blood. You couldn't hurt each other. You can wrestle all you want, punch each other. I don't care. No, you can't hurt each other. I remember when I think Jeremy was 7 or 8 years old, and so Justin's 3 years older than him. And we're over a good friend's house in the same neighborhood here, and all the kids are in the basement. It's a Hanukkah event, so all the adults are in the living room doing the present thing and all that, and the kids have long since disappeared, and they're in the basement. And Jeremy comes up the stairs crying. Now, there's probably like 5 or 6 kids down there. And Jeremy comes up the stairs crying. Now he's behind us and we're facing like the TV over there. And both Dina and I had the same response. You're not bleeding. I don't want to hear about it. Get lost. And Jeremy persists behind us, but so we both turn around and Jeremy's got blood pouring down his face like this. And what had happened was that one of the other kids was spinning what we think was a metal rake in the basement and clipped his forehead. And, scalp wounds bleed a lot. But this is how bad parents we are. Her reaction, and I fully supported it, was, "Get off the carpet, it's white." It wasn't about the blood. We didn't care about the blood. So maybe that was an example of releasing a little early. I don't know, but priorities being a little out of whack. But in one respect, that was one of the rare times that she and I were on the same page, which is really bad.
No, it's not just boys, Keith. Believe me, it's not.
Oh, I'm sure it's not. But as they got older, as my boys got older and they got bigger, her acceptance of their fighting diminished and nearly disappeared. So she would get really angry whenever they would fight. And I just assumed I knew it would grow because that my acceptance grew more because I grew up in a family where I was one of 4 boys. Right. And that's all we did was beat the crap out of each other. So it never fazed me what they would do, and it would definitely get much more intense. They're bigger than I am, so they would have their bouts in living room, basement, whatever. And she used to get really, really angry about it, and I used to just laugh and say, "Yeah, call me when you're done."
Yeah. That sounds like that sounds familiar. My mother, and I'll bring this up, was one of 9. 7 girls, and my grandfather was he owned a karate school in Kearney, and he would literally send them. He would, if they'd fight, he'd send them over to the school, and his back room basically was essentially. I don't know if you're familiar with wrestling with the Hart family. the dungeon. That's essentially what that was. What the back room was in the karate school was this room that was for specifically for sparring and things like that. There was no ring, there was no ropes. It was just fucking four walls and a mat. And he would set them over there, and they'd beat the shit out of each other. So these are not stories that that are unfamiliar to me. I've heard these stories all my life. I mean, in fact, I remember my aunt Kathy. They were talking about hair parts and cowlicks and things like that, and my aunt Kathy goes to my mother one day. You see this cowlick? You see this fucking cowlick right here? My mother had picked up a Coke bottle and broken it over her head. So, and I'm not, and you know what Coke bottles I'm talking about. You know how Coke bottles were back in the.
Oh, that's why we used to laugh about them being what you used to see, right? Because they were so thick.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a lot of stories that I could tell that I really would find myself in a lot of trouble for. So I'm not going to tell much more than I have already. But yeah. And Sadie and Delana will have their moments for sure. So believe me, I know.
That's like my wife actually, when she was younger, she was the baby in the family, right? So she was always pretty well protected by the mother. And they were supposed to be doing dishes. And so her older sister always had to do the dishes and always seemed like she got the short end of the stick, right? So they were fighting one day, and her sister took a glass, threw it at her, hit her in the head.
What?
On her head where the glass broke.
Oh, glass. Oh,
But yeah, it was like a glass. It's crazy.
My older brother. Well, I have three older brothers, obviously, and I'm the baby of my family. And my next older brother, Stuart, was responsible for a lot of my dental work. One upon, I don't know what I did. I think he knows the story, but he got pissed off at me at one point during the middle of a fight, and he literally grabbed the back of my head and pushed it and slammed my head down on the desk and took out one of my teeth. And it was another time when we were having a more fun pillow fight where I dove out of the way of a pillow fight and took out the other front tooth on another desk. So yeah, I these aren't exactly me. Yeah, well, you know.
Well, and my other takeaway from your story, Keith, is that you guys were a studious bunch with all those desks in your house.
Yes, well, every boy had his own desk. Absolutely. Yes, indeed. I hated those things too. But there was plenty of fooling around, crazy stuff with what the boys do when we were growing up, and mostly with Stuart because he was closest to me in age. The other two were kind of gone by the time I was old enough to fight, like for real fight.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so having that experience. Yeah, my ex-wife used to tell me the story of when she was growing up with her 3 years younger brother, who went on to become, by the way, a professional athlete. But when he was a kid, she took a bat and hit him in the head. And you don't understand that siblings fight? What is this all about? I don't understand.
Yeah, you could say that. I'm trying to think if I can remember anything that wasn't that wasn't an accident with my sister. I can't really recall anything a little too much.
You painted your history there, Jason, because I guarantee you some of it was deliberate, not accidental.
Well, no, there's honestly only one that I can remember, and it was absolutely accidental. We were playing baseball, and her boyfriend at the time, she would have been 13, I guess. I was probably 7, 8. She would have been 13 or 14, maybe a little older than that, but not much. He threw the ball too high, and she swung overhand for it with an aluminum bat and missed it. And I thought, kind of the thought that is, if she hits it, that ball's going to go straight down and it'll bounce up pretty much right to me. She missed and got me instead of the ball. My eye for a while looked like I had gone 12, gone actually 3 with Tyson. My eye was completely swollen shut, and I broke blood vessels in my eye.
And all these years later, you think that was an accident? Really?
Jackass. But yeah, that's really honestly the only thing that I can think of. I don't. Yeah, I can't really think of anything. Like I said, we're 6.5 years. Well, 6 years and 2 months different in age. So, there isn't a whole heck of a lot of stories that I can remember like that with my sister. I would say probably there's been some smaller examples now, but nothing too bad, So
I think intergenerationally, one of my favorite stories with Justin. Justin was a very good baseball player when he was late single digits. And I used to challenge him a lot, much to the chagrin of his mother. Hit a lot of ground balls at him, throw a lot with him. And by the time he was about 9, and I could really throw back then. And this is a dozen years ago, and I had some really good velocity on my baseball throw. And that, about when he turned 9, I was able to throw full force. And I will never forget, and I'm sure he won't either, being at a July 4th at the pool in the community on July 4th, and we're ignoring the pool itself. We're off on the grass, off to the side, throwing baseball like we did every single day, throwing a baseball. And I'm whipping it, and he missed once. He put his glove up. I should say, excuse me, because he's left-handed. He put his glove up. He put it up a little low, and it tipped off the top of the glove, took him right in the mouth. I think he lost like a tooth over here. It's one of those, I look at him go down in a pile, and I'm like, that can't be good. That's not good. And he's crying. He's 9 years old, and we find the tooth in the dirt, and we rush him off to the dentist and all that. But I love the story because an hour later we're back at the pool, and the dentist looked at it as like nothing we could do. She just made sure it stopped bleeding and sent us home. And we're back at the pool an hour later, and Dad, let's go throw the ball.
Yeah.
Mom was furious with me. Justin, just let's throw the ball. Let's throw the ball. Or the other time when I hit ground balls at him, and I hit one so hard that when I got to him, there's seams in a baseball, and it hit him in the knee and skidded away. And he went down. He wasn't crying or anything, but you could tell it hurt. And I walked up to him and said, "You okay there?" And we looked down at his knee, and you could clearly see the seam of the baseball imprinted in his knee. What did he want to do? He just got back up and said, "Okay, I'm good now." Hit some more balls.
Yeah.
Screaming line drive that he took off his knee, and he didn't care. Might have released a little early on that one too.
I guess that's the I guess with something like that, that's kind of more about your own competitive nature than really releasing early. I mean, I guess sports is one of those things that that I would say I'm not 100% sure there is a release of that. But I don't know. I mean, there's just the decision of whether they play the sport or not. I mean, I don't think it's a release because things can happen. You know, there are bigger and stronger kids than everyone in all sports, and I mean, so far with the girls now going on, I think, Sadie Delaina's probably going in into her fourth year, really. Sadie going into her third year with jiu-jitsu. There's been they've hurt themselves 3 different times. They've Delaina fracturing her ankle, Sadie fracturing her wrist, which she just returned from this week, and then Delaina did actually injure herself in jiu-jitsu once. She sprained her ankle right before Sadie broke her wrist. So it really comes, like I said, it comes with the competitive nature. I knew the risks because a grown man, not long after we started, who I actually spoke to quite a lot and actually trained with myself, he was severely injured his knee in training and was out for a while. He tore some ligaments in his knee. So, I mean, I know, that aspect is real and it is there. But it comes with the territory, especially with sports. So.
And yet the only time that Justin ever got injured in baseball was when I hurt him. Never hurt himself in a game.
I could tell you some doozies. One including me breaking my right index finger playing baseball. That's a story for another time. But yeah, I did break my finger. Injured my back wrestling. A couple other minor injuries here and there. The back kind of was a little more significant, but
that's minor. Come on.
If I told you the full story, you wouldn't think it was minor. Anybody else? We're actually pushing up on an hour pretty quick here. Anybody want to add anything before we start to wrap this up?
We got Doug hiding in the car now with all the winds that were going on. I know it's gusting like crazy here, so it must be pretty windy by Doug too.
Yeah, I made the move to the car only because it's right here. It's quiet, so.
Anybody got anything to add, or are we just gonna wrap this up?
Wrap it, baby.
Okay. It's probably one of the more difficult things to do as a parent, to start to let go, especially with certain things. There are certain things I will say that you probably never let go. You never stop worrying. You never stop being concerned that they're okay. And other things. But all of that, if you do let go, what kind of a parent does it make you if you do? I know that, like I said, I mean, yeah, there are certain things you don't stop, you don't let go, you don't stop worrying, things like that. And like I said, that's all part of being a parent, I believe. So from all of us here at Dads on Life, take care, everybody.
Take care.
Play
good.
ball.
Yeah.